Let's do it. Paul, great to meet you, sir. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today for the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So before we get into your good work and your book and what's going on in your world, I want to know 5 years ago, this pandemic was changing the world, changing our lives. How did you get through the coronavirus era and how has it influenced the way that you do things today?
It's interesting. We learned in that time that you don't need to be in the office for 50 hours a week um, in order to be productive. Um, but we also learned that there's value in human connection and human interaction. And I think that time further exposed what had been a priority of mine for a long time, which is, the need for better leadership and stronger cultures, and that dynamic of sending people home and being remote or hybrid or what have you, it it exposed a lot of weaknesses in organizations, but also sort of as a green shoot, looked like to me a bunch of opportunities in how we get folks together and make the most of our time together and that sort of thing. So I got through it by contracting it very early in the process and getting through that.
Yeah.
Um, and then from that point on, it was really okay. How do we adapt as people, as leaders, as organizations, and then how we navigate getting back to whatever normal is now. I saw the good in people, which was great, and how people rose to the challenge of all the things that came up in that time. So that's something to cling on to as well.
So the one thing during that time period, when everybody came back, there was this kind of move for some companies to get everybody back in person. Did you subscribe to that notion?
No, because I think and frankly, I had a business plan at the organization I was at the time before COVID even happened to alter our human capital and real estate strategy, because I didn't think that we needed to have everybody in the office 5 days a week, 10 hours a day. I also think that we suffer by being in our own home offices or wherever we happen to be fully remote all the time.
Yeah.
As I said, there's tremendous value in human interaction, and when you don't have it face to face, it feels different. It feels artificial. It feels forced. It's more difficult to bring people together. Thankfully, we have technology to get us, a large part of the way there. I don't subscribe to you have to be in the office every day. I also don't subscribe to um, you can do everything you want and be the most that you can be as an organization or as a team or as a human by being locked in your office at home every day. Um, so I think there is a happy medium in there, and for the folks that are really looking at things from a dollars and cents perspective, there's a real opportunity financially to get this right as well. You don't every time you fill up your building, you don't need to build a second building and to put more people in there. Use your space a little bit more wisely, and give people the flexibility. I think there's the other part of this that we've learned is that people, and this is sort of slightly overlapping what we bring about in the book, is there's a trust component to any organization or any relationship, and when trust is given and is present and is earned and is kept, um, you can give people the flexibility to do what they need to do and also show up in the way that they need to show up to make your organization successful.
You know, I think having that work life or that balance between remote and being in person is almost like when you decide to lose weight. You can't just do one thing. You got to work out, you got to eat right, you got to move, you got to do all these things, cardio, weight. Sometimes there's this notion that you do one thing, and it's the same thing with that. Even if you are remote, you still have to socialize. You still have to be a mingler. You have to keep that culture alive. And that's one of the parts of your world is organizational culture, and that's what I want to get to, the essence of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day, and there's a kid in the back of the room that wants to know what you do for a living. How do you answer that child?
Well, I've made a decision to move into the next phase of my career, which is not to work for an organization and to do more writing and speaking and mentoring and consulting. But had had you asked me a year or so ago, and I was in financial services risk management, My job was to help organizations be profitable, be safe, and to minimize the amount of uh, risks that are unplanned that could knock an organization off of its course, off of its strategy, to reduce unnecessary risks and costs, and to keep people and customers safe.
What did you want to be at 12 years old? What was your dream job?
I always thought in the back of my head I would be in financial services, and I was, but my dream job when I was that age was either to be a veterinarian or the GM of a baseball team.
So take me back. Where were you born and raised?
Mechanicsville, Virginia, right outside of Richmond.
Okay. So what were the foundational elements that made you want to be a GM, that made you want to get into financial services? What were those seeds that were planted early on that has evolved and been harvested into your career?
I think first and foremost, in terms of financial services, my mom was in financial services when when I was growing up, and she was and still is um, a real inspiration to me. Um, she was in the banking world. That sort of spurred my interest to learn about that sort of thing. So when I first started reading books and paying attention to things on TV that weren't sports, they were typically in the financial services realm. Um, Always liked animals and farmland and rural and all that. So I was sort of in the veterinary realm there for a while, and then I realized that dogs would die on my watch, and I didn't think I could get through that. So
Yeah.
I set that aside a little bit. And I've played every sport growing up, and I, obviously have been involved in sports and throughout my adulthood. So that was always sort of a passion of mine. I made a decision once I got out of college that the more I guess the safer route would have been to go through the corporate financial services world, and I've looked for opportunities along the way to scratch the itch from a hobby perspective when it comes to athletics.
So what was your baseball team up in Virginia? Who did you follow?
Believe it or not, I was a Houston Astros fan,
Okay.
and which, yeah, growing up we didn't have any professional major league team anywhere near us. The default was the Atlanta Braves because their AAA team was in Richmond. And I did, obviously follow them. But my first little league baseball team was the Astros, and the second year after that happened, Nolan Ryan, who was my favorite player, was signed by the Astros. So lifelong Astros fan.
Excellent. So let me ask you this. When did you realize, take me back to the beginning of your career. When did you realize this was the path that was going to be for you?
My first um, my first job in financial services was working in a brokerage operations organization in a small regional broker dealer in Richmond, Virginia. And I had some friends and some friends of friends that had started working there, and I tell people all the time that first job that I had, where I wasn't making hardly any money whatsoever, every single day I learned, I worked hard, and I laughed. It was, I mean, and at times it was 60, 70 hours a week. Um, and I didn't care. I just loved it. I enjoyed who I was working with. I enjoyed who I was working for. I enjoyed the subject matter. I enjoyed the fact that you could master subject matter. And that just opened up the door to, more and more that you needed to learn. The more it's a great first lesson, actually. The more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. Um, and I always tell people that first job was probably the happiest I've ever been in my career because every single day was a positive experience to me.
So who was your hero? Who was kind of an inspirational force for you in your career that's allowed you to navigate to this point in your life?
I've been really fortunate, Joe, to have a number of them. Along the whole way, it's been my mom because of all that she's accomplished in her life, in her career. Um, Being a woman in financial services was not an easy thing in the 80s. It's still not, but it certainly wasn't in the 80s. and to see how she uh, worked through all of that and came out hugely successful has been a big inspiration to me and has caused me to emphasize and prioritize certain things, especially in the latter half of my career. So that's one. Um, I've been blessed with multiple leaders that have set wonderful examples or have given me a lot of good insight. That very first job, I had a boss that told me he gave me my first lesson in self-awareness. I was 25 years old. Didn't Certainly did not have self-awareness mastered, and he pulled me into his office one day and said, "Paul, I need you to understand something. People are always watching you. People are watching what you say, what you do, how you react to stress, how you react to positive things, how you react to negative things." He saw that I was a future leader. He saw that I was a future manager of people, and he saw that I hadn't gotten that licked yet. And that was probably the best gift that I ever got because once you're self-aware, um, you see things a different way. You are present in a different way than you might be if you weren't. And it also unlocks a bit of a lifelong learner mentality. Um, I don't have to know everything. I don't have to purport to know everything, which means I can be authentic. And it's actually very liberating to say, I don't know about that. Why don't you tell me about that so I can learn more? And that actually attracts people to you as a leader as well. So his name was Steve Beck, and he was a huge inspiration to me as well.
So if you could meet one powerhouse business leader that's alive today, have a lunch, spend some time, ask some questions, who would you love to talk to? I mean, it could even be an athlete, but just somebody that's inspirational, that is well-rounded, that does it right.
I'm probably a little bit influenced by who I listen to, who I read, and that sort of thing. Simon Sinek is a wonderful speaker. He's done a really good job of bringing um, leadership and self-awareness and organizational cultural topics to the forefront. He seems to be and he has that knack for he clearly is very, very intelligent and has learned quite a bit, but he still has that tell me how you're doing this so I can learn how you do it type of behavior or demeanor, which I really appreciate. So I would love to be able to share some ideas with him of what I've learned, but also learn from all of the people that he's talked to and the successes and failures that he's had.
So let me ask you this. What is it that gets you up every day to do this work that you do at a high level? Not only professionally, but personally to take care of your soul. What is that energy for you every day?
I have seen in 34, 35 years of postgraduate work, um, organizations that run well, organizations that don't run well. And especially in the latter half of my career, the 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 difference between the two is stark. And and you start questioning, why is that organization running well? Why is that one not? How did that leader turn that organization around and that leader did not? Why do people want to go work for that person? Why do people not want to go work for that person? And what I've found is first and foremost, I don't think organizations um, consistently invest in their people's leadership development skills. Um, And then secondly, I don't think people themselves prioritize becoming better leaders. So they typically rely on whatever they've learned in the past, whether it's right or not, and sort of perpetuate that. What gets me up every morning is trying to help organizations be better and help leaders be better by sharing with them, what I've learned, both good and bad, and to see organizations transform, to see organizations get better is hugely rewarding.
So it was a part of your career arc, you were in risk management. When you
Mhm.
look at your career, what's the biggest risk that you took?
I I've said yes to a lot of things in my career. Um, I was also a something that a leader of mine in the past told me, especially earlier in your career, say yes to as many things as possible. Um, I think the biggest risk that I took was taking the leap to leave Virginia, where we were from, to move with our organization halfway across the country when we relocated. It was a risk for me because we were uprooting our family and moving away 1,000 plus miles away from everyone that we knew. Um, and then we raised our daughter basically a plane ride or two away from her grandparents, her aunts and uncles, that sort of thing. Um, I've found, and I have friends that have stayed in the Richmond area for their entire career. There's no there's no right answer or wrong answer. There are consequences, negative and positive, to every decision you make in life. We made that decision to move, and it changed the trajectory of how I viewed my career, um, for the better. Um, I wish we had been closer to our family for the last 3 decades or 2 decades plus. Um, I'm not I'm not disappointed in our decision because it allowed me to grow in ways I probably would not have grown had we stayed put.
So as a financial guy, understanding money well, in your life, if you ever got a big paycheck, do you reinvest or do you put a little aside and get something fun?
My typical, I'm fairly conservative in that regard, and my wife would probably emphatically agree with me on this. We would typically set aside almost all of it anytime we got any sort of bonus or any additional money, and we would reinvest it.
Okay.
Um, and the reason why was, first of all, I think if we were in an honest moment with ourselves, we all probably spend money on things we don't need to. And we've probably all at least once in our lives thought, if I had the money back from all of these piddly things that we bought over the last 30 years, what would have been able to do with that money and how much would we have now? I at least think about that from time to time.
Yeah.
But the reason why I made that decision and sort of reinforced that with our family is I wanted, by the time I was in my mid 50s, to have the flexibility to do what I wanted, and not to be beholden to another organization.
Yeah.
So it was important to me. If I wanted to keep working in that regard, I could. If I wanted to do something different, I had the financial flexibility to do so.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you and you got a book in your hands, kind of a big coffee table book, and you hand it over and you tell that young version of you, this is how your life turned out. Would that young version of you believe it?
Well, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, I didn't think I would ever leave Virginia. I had probably a myopic, innocent view of how large organizations work, and certainly those in financial services. Probably did not have an appreciation for how much mergers and acquisitions impact large organizations and financial services companies. Um, so no, I probably would have had a completely different view of what would have happened. Um, Certainly the part about moving all the way across the country.
Yeah. So let's say you walked into a room and you walked up to a podium and the whole room is full of everybody that's known you as a business professional all these years. And you could tell that room one fun story about you. Maybe your favorite experience watching a sporting event, first concert you went to, a great place you traveled to. Just a fun story, jumping out of an airplane, outrunning a bear, some kind of fun story. What would you tell that room that might humanize you a little bit to that group?
When I was probably early 30s. I'd probably been married 6 or 7 years and had started to get comfortable in my body, you might say. Um, and I had an epiphany one day when I've climbed a flight of stairs and was out of breath. And it was an epiphany that I don't want to feel like this.
Yeah.
Um, we did not have our daughter yet, but I knew that we were going to be parents. Um, and I wanted to be uh, a different person than what I looked like at the time. And I
Yeah.
wasn't morbidly obese or anything, but I was out of shape, not
Yeah.
like I was when I was an athlete when I was in my teens and 20s. So so I embarked on, and this is, what we've talked about before earlier today about your decisions daily over and over again. You don't go on a diet for a week and you're good. You have to change your lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so I changed my lifestyle the next day. Um, and that led itself to running, which led itself to um, using running as a way of setting goals for yourself and being disciplined for yourself, and to have this sense of accomplishment, which, by the way, translates into all other parts of your life.
Yeah.
And so the most, um, I guess, the proudest moment that I had, which was probably the greatest non-family, non-work related experience in my life, was in my third marathon. I qualified for the Boston Marathon
Wow.
in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and and that was the culmination of daily choices for a couple of years um, that led to achieving a goal that would have been unheard of 5 years earlier.
Absolutely.
And the pride that I had that day, and to have my family there at the finish line, um, can't beat it.
That's wonderful. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that gets your book, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, Probably a little too serious at times. Um, Fairly conservative in terms of, I'm probably less likely to be the first person to go out and do a crazy thing. Um, Hopefully, a good role model to my daughter. Um, Avid sports fan. Um, Serial goal setter.
I gotta know, as a sports fan, if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one game, where are you going?
Wow. See, I'm a alumnus of Virginia Tech and a diehard Virginia Tech Hokie, and I've seen 200 plus um, football games in person,
Yeah,
countless more on television. But I'm also a baseball historian. Um, I would have loved to have seen Bob Gibson pitch, but I think if I was going to go back to one game, I'd go back to the 1965 perfect game that Sandy Koufax threw in Dodger Stadium.
that even to this day just seems like it's absolutely unmatched. At one point during this playoff run, someone had five scoreless, and everybody was just like, "Oh, what are we doing?" But they were nowhere near getting to that point where, I mean, a no hitter is one thing, but a perfect game in that environment, that's crazy, unheard of. You know?
It is crazy. I will give Shohei Ohtani his flowers though, because
Yeah,
his playoff game that he had this fall, where he had six shutout innings with 10 strikeouts, and oh, by the way, he also hit three homers in the game,
that's crazy.
maybe not surpassed in baseball history.
That's crazy. Yeah, I remember waking up the next day because I just wasn't following it that close, and I was like, "Wait, wait, wait, wait." I just thought he hit one home run, and then the stats came out, and it was like, "Wow!" It was that.
Yeah.
That's unreal. So, if anyone wants to pick up a copy of your book, they want to see you speak, they want to hire you, they have questions, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, thank you. The book's name is Built on Purpose, Leadership, Lessons in Leadership and Culture. You can find it on, first of all, my website, paulpatera.com. where you can get signed copies as well as links to purchase it on Amazon. I think it's also available on Barnes and Noble. You can also go to paulpetera.com for to contact me for any other services that you might like. I do speaking, mentoring, coaching, and also do freelance writing as well. So please visit the website. Be happy to connect with you.
Okay, I will put all these links in the show notes. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you.